Welcome to my channel, Bananas for Bikes. My name is Sean. Today we are going to be talking about gravel riding. Now this is sort of just a free flow. I've got some points here off screen, but ultimately I want to kind of define what I think gravel riding is and how I might have fun doing it, because a few years ago I was looking for a new bike. I went and bought a few bikes, ended up sticking with this Cannondale Topstone here, which is a great bike, by the way. And I think the more that we can kind of define what gravel riding is, it makes it easier for us to not only pick a bike that's right for the kind of riding that we do, but it also helps pick a route that's more appropriate for the kind of bike or gravel bike that you might have. And ultimately what that means is you'll have more of a safer experience, and you'll also have more fun on your rides. And ultimately that's what this video is about, is how to have more fun gravel riding. So I think gravel riding has an identity crisis. When they first came out with gravel bikes 10 years ago, there's a little documentary thing on the Salsa Warbird, which is actually pretty cool. I think most people kind of labeled them as like road bikes that just could fit wider tires. Now to be fair, the gravel industry was just trying to figure out, what are these bikes? Are they hybrids? Are they Frankensteins? How are people going to use them? We know that people like to do the Dirty Kanza, or there's another ride in Idaho or something like that. And we know people like that kind of riding, but turns out people use these things for nearly all different kinds of terrain. So I think we're still experimenting and trying to figure out what the target use of these bikes should be. As the bikes got more aggressive, some with even larger tires, 2-inch or wider, you got the flat handlebars. People are saying, aren't they just modernized 1990 mountain bikes? And yeah, they kind of are. So all of these things, I think, because gravel riding didn't have sort of this, it didn't fit into a nice category like road bikes for road riding, mountain bikes for mountain biking. And so I think a lot of people either got turned off by it initially, which I kind of did, because it's like, what is this thing? But as you understand it more, you actually begin to enjoy it more, and you get to learn more about other riding styles that you might enjoy. One of the reasons I think gravel bikes is such a confusing category also is because of bike packing. Now, bike packing is basically when you go on multi-day adventures off-road with gear. And so it's kind of like road bike touring, but off-road. And because these bikes often have wider tires, like mountain bike tires and flat bars, I think it sort of interlaces with the gravel bike category, and so people became even more confused. I think most people would agree that you can bike pack on a gravel bike for the most part, depending on how techy the terrain is. But they really are two separate categories. Bike packing aside, I think the difficult part about gravel riding identity is that they don't have an assigned style of riding, terrain style. In the very loose sense, they're just labeled as road bikes that can go off-road. And because of this design versatility, we have bikes that are produced with a huge range of capabilities, all the way from more race or speed-oriented gravel bikes, all the way to monster cross bikes, and now with single chain rings, wider tires, and even front suspension. Now, one could easily make the argument that, well, duh, Sean, gravel bikes are meant for gravel. They're not really meant for road riding as well as road bikes, and they're not really meant for technical mountain bike trails. However, in the Pacific Northwest, you either have road riding or you have mountain biking. There are some fire roads and stuff, but oftentimes they're just in a forest, old logging roads, not a lot of views. And so some of them can be cool, but it is kind of hard to find a terrain that's just fits this thing perfectly without being underbiked for a good section of it. Now, in a previous video, I did outline these essentially what this website here, cyclingtips.com, kind of how they view the different grades of gravel. And so take a minute to take a look at these different kinds of gravel. One of the things I want to point out is that, yes, gravel bikes are great as road bikes, in my opinion. They're great on this grade 1, which is poorly paved tarmac. Grade 2, which is very hard pack, or dirt roads. 3 here is a little bit smooth gravel, but there is some chunk in it. I would say that at this point we're reaching mountain bike category, especially for your XC bikes, with the exception of maybe if it's a long ride or if it's not too steep. But as soon as these rides get steep, which they do in the Pacific Northwest, or they get even more technical, which they also do here, you're quickly and dangerously approaching the underbiking category, and so that can get a little sketch. Grade 4 here is like basically what the upper limits of what you would take your Toyota Camry on, and then grade 5 is here where they say borderline mountain bike territory, and I would argue that class 3, but certainly class 4 is more, or grade 4 is more mountain bike category. So here are just some closing thoughts real quick. I appreciate your guys' time in watching these videos. Hopefully you find some value out of them. Unless you're a dedicated roadie, I'd buy a race-oriented gravel bike. We're seeing road cyclists now running 28s and now even 32s on some bikes, which can easily fit on the Cannondale. And let's be honest, those road fenders, if you do ride in inclement weather, those road bike fenders that kind of strap on with Velcro or whatever, or have those modified mounts, don't really fit that well. And with these bikes, you still have plenty of clearance for mud guards. So it's just in my opinion, unless you're just going to do road riding, a gravel bike's great. The geometry is a little bit more relaxed and comfortable, but you can still slam that stem down. So, I mean, it's still a pretty fast-oriented bike. It's still pretty aero. You've got the drop bars. You've got the gearing, which I would argue gravel bike gearing on a 2x system like this 2x11 GRX is much better for road riding than road cassettes, because I've gotten 11 to 34 on here, and what I've found is that there are roads, paved roads that go road riding, and I'm in like the second smallest or the smallest cassette ring in the back on some really steep climbs. So I would actually not have enough gears if I ran a traditional road cassette. But I'm also finding that because it's an 11 speed, that the steps between the gears aren't super big. So it's still great if you want to kind of dial in on the flat, like just the right cadence. But on like a 9 speed, like on my Fuji, yeah, the gaps are definitely going to be a little bit wider there. But I find this GRX is perfect for road riding. I found, at least for me personally, this is all based on personal experience, is that you're going to do any kind of riding where a good portion of it is technical, rocky, rooty, or steep. I find that you are quickly underbiked on the Cannondale, and a hardtail is a much better option. Even if you ran a 1x on here, you'd still either run out of gears on the road, which why have drop bars and carbon frame and then put a 1x on it? It's like, if you're into racing and like time trials and you're 1x, you're gonna be either not going fast enough on the tarmac, or you're not gonna have high enough gear for climbing off road. This is a 1134 with a 30-tooth cassette chain ring in the front. I run out of gears on this and have to hike a bike all the time. But on this hardtail here, I find that in the lowest gear, it is just right for me to get up those really technical ascents. And because I have the right gearing, I can remain seated, putting weight on that back tire, which allows for more grip. But with this, as soon as you're off-road and have to get up out of that saddle to get up a hill, you're going to be spinning on this 37C tire. I love the Riddlers, but again, if your terrain is class 4, 5, and you need to get out of the saddle, forget about it. Get yourself a hardtail. Now, while there is overlap between different kinds of bikes, like hardtails and full suspension bikes have some overlap in the terrain that they can both do well. However, a road bike and a mountain bike are going to be very different. You're going to be left with a gap in there that if you want to do any of that kind of riding, you don't have the right bike. What I find with a gravel bike and a hardtail is that their capabilities nearly butt up next to each other. So as soon as you're underbiked on the Cannondale, you're clearly sitting in mountain bike territory for the rides that I've gone on that aren't super long. So I find that I've got the most capability, the most variety of terrain that I can go on, having just these two bikes. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, these last 2 years I've been really interested in terms of trying to figure out what the right bike for me is. And a big part of that is defining how do I actually use a bike? And then when you get a bike, planning the routes around the function of that bike. That means you're just going to have more fun because you have the right tool for the job. But rather than asking, do you have the perfect tool for the job or the perfect bike for the terrain that you want to ride on, I think maybe a better question is, what bike do you have more fun on? And I find that I have more fun on this hardtail as soon as I start going off-roading. Now again, the Cannondale is going to be great for anything that's not super steep or super techy, even if it is off-road. But as soon as either of those things happen, I'm quickly, firmly in the hardtail category. I just have more fun on it. Even though I've done a lot of the same routes with both bikes, I can descend faster with more confidence, more fun, more adrenaline. I feel safer, and I don't feel like I'm going to dent one of these expansive rims because I have chunkier tires and some more suspension. It's more comfortable. I've got the gears to go up some of the steep stuff. It just rolls really nice with these 2.1s. It's not super fat tires. They roll decent enough to get to the trailhead, although it certainly is slower on the road than this. It's just more fun. And I think ultimately, I plan road routes for the Cannondale that are a lot of fun. I plan mountain bike routes for the mountain bike, and I let the two bikes do what they do best rather than trying to force my gravel bike to be a mountain bike. Hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, comments, I'd love to hear from you. If you've had any experience doing some research in gravel riding and it's like, what is going on here? Leave them down below. I'd love to see what your thoughts are. I've seen a ton of other videos online that talk about like just the concept of gravel riding, what it even means. And so hopefully you got some value out of this video. Cheers.